Well, I feel like a lot has happened since the last episode of the Morning Pit. You know, we had a Morning Pit on, was it Friday? And since then, I thought that one was really fun and interesting. We talked to Olivia Babcock from the women's volleyball team and, had a great conversation there. Pitt Volleyball, incidentally, is undefeated since Olivia Babcock appeared on the Morning Pit. Just saying. Probably just coincidence, but maybe it's not. We talked to Olivia Babcock. That was Friday morning. We put that out. And basically since then, Pitt has hired a new AD, multiple volleyball matches. Pitt football moved up in the AP poll. Basketball held a semi-open practice for select viewers. And all of it led into this new week where we're counting down to Pitt Syracuse on Thursday night. So there's kind of a lot going on. And obviously we're going to spend most of this week previewing that Pitt Syracuse game, an absolutely huge game. And I'll say as a brief aside, it's one of the things that I really enjoy right now is that every game is an absolutely huge game. And that's been the case for a little while. But I mean, you get past 6-0, you're now in the territory of really making noise. And you've been making some noise so far. But at 6-0, you're now heading into the territory where you really have a chance to make some noise with every game. And so every game is absolutely huge. And they'll actually keep getting bigger every time you win. If they beat Syracuse and they get to 7-0, that SMU game is just gigantic and it's going to keep getting bigger. And if they win that one and they get to 8-0, then the Virginia game is gigantic and even bigger than the SMU game, and so on and so forth. Obviously, that Clemson game is going to be a monster game if somehow they are 9-0 when they go into it. But that's the fun part, is that every game keeps getting bigger as long as you keep winning. And it starts this Thursday night at Acrisure Stadium against Syracuse in a huge game. No way around it. And so we got a lot to talk about with that game. We got a lot to talk about throughout the week leading into that game. And we'll have a lot to say, certainly, tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday's morning pits to get you ready for Thursday night. I think I shouldn't even throw this out here, but my tentative plan, I think this is going to be fun. We're going to do our post-game show after the Syracuse game on Thursday night, of course. We will go live. We'll have a live show. It's going to start at like 1 o'clock in the morning. So hopefully you guys are willing to stay up. I can't really see a boring outcome for this game. Win, lose, blowout on either side, whatever it happens, it's going to be interesting. We're going to have lots to talk about. And so we'll have a live show Thursday night after the game. And then my thought is, rather than we finish the live stream and I just tape the Morning Pit for the next day, my thought, and I shouldn't even say this now, there's 4 days before this is going to happen. My thought is to do a live taping in the Morning Pit a little bit later on Friday morning, maybe around 9 or 10 in the morning. We'll just do a live Morning Pit. You can be part of it. It'll be a live stream. We'll talk for a little while. It'll be a Morning Pit, but it'll have you guys involved. You'll be involved. Like we always are, like we are on the live stream. So we'll have the live show Thursday night after the game. Early Friday morning is what it'll really be. And then we'll have the live taping of the Morning Pit Friday morning. So that'll be fun. We'll have a lot of opportunities to hang out and talk about that game, and a lot of opportunities between now and then to talk about the game. We'll have our live stream on Wednesday night, of course. We'll have some basketball to talk about on that front, since the Panthers have their exhibition game tomorrow night, so taking on Point Park. So kind of like I said right at the beginning, there's a lot going on right now, and a lot of it has happened. Pretty much all of it has happened since we put out the last Morning Pit. Oh, and we had the interview on Saturday too, where we talked to Ishmael Leggett and Jalen Lowe. Put that here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Hopefully you got a chance to check that out. It was a lot of fun to talk to those two guys. I suspect we're going to be talking to those guys a lot all season. But there's a lot going on. There's a lot to talk about, a lot to cover. So let's dive into it here on the Monday edition of the Morning Pit on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's a Monday edition of the Morning Pit, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. After a pretty active week, I mean, one of the more busy weekends I can remember, with more news stories on a weekend when Pitt didn't even play. The Panthers, of course, off in advance of Thursday night's game against Syracuse at Acrisure Stadium. They get this Saturday off before, obviously Saturday off after, which is kind of nice. It allowed us all to watch some college football on Saturday. Miami-Louisville game got a pretty extended viewing from me, as well as, of course, Texas-Georgia at night. That was interesting to watch. Not necessarily a great game, but it was compelling and had some really compelling moments. Lesson learned from that game: if you don't like a call, if you think the refs blew the call, just throw stuff on the field. You can get them to delay the game for a little while, and maybe the refs will hang out and talk about it for a little bit and change the call. And they changed it in favor of the home team. They changed it in favor of the people who were throwing stuff on the field. So there you go. If you, are feeling some kind of way about a call on Thursday night, I definitely don't suggest that you throw anything onto the field. I don't think you should do that, but it's a proven technique with success. So maybe you should consider it. No, obviously you shouldn't. But it was a busy weekend, even though Pitt did not play 2 volleyball matches, a basketball semi-open practice, new rankings, new polls released. And then, of course, first things last, like an hour or two after we released the Morning Pitt on Friday morning, news broke that Pitt had hired a new athletic director. Alan Green is the new athletic director, a Notre Dame graduate who has spent time at several schools, 3 schools in the SEC. He's been in the upper levels of the athletic departments. He's been an athletic director himself at Buffalo and Auburn. Kind of you follow his path and you see an interesting sort of natural trajectory, right? He's in the upper levels of the athletic department at Ole Miss for a couple years. He gets the job as the athletic director at Buffalo, or rather, I should say he went to Buffalo with Danny White and was in the higher levels of Buffalo's athletic department, and then took over as the director of athletics at Buffalo, and then parlayed his success there into a job at Auburn as the director of athletics. And I think that is probably where we're all reading resumes, right? We're all reading resumes and testimonials about Alan Green to try and figure out what we think of him as an athletic director for Pitt and what kind of job we suspect he will do. We're all reading resumes. And I think the resume bullet point that has stood out the most to Pitt fans, or at least caused the most concern, is that the nature of his tenure at Auburn, and particularly how it came to a close. I guess officially, Alan Green resigned. In some sense, his contract simply wasn't renewed, or he wasn't given an extension. He wasn't officially fired, but it was sort of a quiet firing is sort of what it seems to be. I think the first thing to understand about that situation, and Auburn people will probably tell you this even more than I will, is that Auburn is a mess, and was a mess then, and continues to be a mess now, and has been a mess for a long time. When you spend your entire life trying to keep up with Alabama, you're going to put yourself into some tricky situations. When you have boosters who think way too much of themselves, but they give enough money that they can kind of back it up, you're going to end up in some tricky situations. And that's what Alan Green walked into at Auburn. That's what he dealt with at Auburn. And while I'm sure there was disappointment in the way his tenure ended there, it's also not the worst place to get away from. He goes to Ole Miss for a year, then bounces over to Tennessee, which is where he was when Pitt hired him. He was a senior executive. They all have these titles, vice athletic, deputy athletic director, whatever it was, chief operating officer, I think was his title at Tennessee. And there's a lot of things you can look through, and you have to realize, we're getting press releases. Everybody's reading press releases and seeing the success or the accomplishments at this job or that job, or, and sometimes with some of the write-ups, you see some of the struggles or issues at this job or that job, what happened at Auburn, but, the success he had at Auburn, the success he had at Buffalo, or, the impression that he made on people at Ole Miss or at Tennessee. And so you're reading those things, and those are going to highlight all the successes. They're going to make everything sound great. When Heather Lyke puts her resume out for another job, it's going to list all the accomplishments. And on that list of accomplishments is going to be the Victory Heights Project. It's going to be Pitt Football's 2021 ACC Championship. It's going to be all the successes of the Pitt Volleyball program. It's going to be all of these things, and all of which happened under her watch, but all of which, I think when you're a little bit closer to the situation, as we have been, as we've talked about a lot over the past couple months, maybe they don't all reflect, the way that they are, the way they're presented on the resume. This is a long-winded way of saying I'm only slightly moved by what I see on Alan Green's resume, just because when I see a new athletic director get hired, I'm only sort of slightly moved by any of their resumes. I think there's a lot that goes into having a successful athletic department. You obviously have to be good at hiring coaches, and the Brian Harsin hire has been one that has sort of been criticized a lot from Alan Green's time at Auburn. The reality is, I think when Brian Harsin was hired, I mean, he was Chris Peterson's heir apparent at Boise State, and he was widely considered to be the guy on that upward trajectory. I mean, he was supposed to be the next guy. He was going to be one of these young coaches, and sometimes those young coaches who are going to be the man work out, and sometimes they don't. Harsin didn't work out at Auburn, but Auburn, again, let's remember, and it's important, Auburn's a mess, right? And so you got to be able to hire good head coaches, but it just as important to me with an athletic director is the direction of the department. You know, the tone they set for the department. Because the athletic director, there's a lot of things the athletic director does. There's a lot of things the athletic director gets credit or blame for, but happen underneath them. You know, and you have to be able to delegate. You have to be a good leader. You have to have good hiring practices, and that's a very important part of the job for sure. But one of the biggest things the athletic director does, I think, is sets the tone for the department and sort of puts the athletic department on its course and how it's going to approach certain situations and what kind of athletic department it's going to be. And that's what's more interesting to me. And I think there very much was a Heather Lyke guided and directed athletic department. I think there was a Scott Barnes guided and directed athletic department. There was a Steve Peterson and Jeff Long and Steve Peterson guided athletic department. And all of those eras had their ups and downs. You know, I mean, there were positives and negatives from the direction that those athletic directors put the department on. But that's what's most interesting to me. And I think it's what's most relevant right now. In the world of college sports is what kind of tone you'll set for your department, what kind of course you will put the athletic department on, because it's such an important, crucial period in college athletics. And so to that end, when I read about Alan Green, and I read the testimonials about Alan Green, or I read his interview with the Post-Gazette, and shout out to Carter and Thompson for getting that interview. Good on those guys. And, getting Alan Green out there, get some quotes from him. When I read some of those things, there's some points that he hits on, some things that I think he touches on, and some things that are said about him, and I think some things that you can see in his track record that I think should give you some optimism. You know, some of the things he says about the state of college athletics currently, about what you need to do to stay competitive and exist and flourish in this current environment, what commitments you need to have, and what things you need to be committed to. Because let's be honest, this athletic department, I mean, there's a lot of challenges facing it. They have a lot of financial issues that they're going to have to deal with, and Alan Green is going to have to take care of it, and there are going to be some difficult decisions, and maybe it's good to have a brand new face who has no emotional ties to some of these decisions that are going to be made. But everybody has to figure out a way to harness the power of NIL in talent acquisition. And Alan Green is coming from places, most recently and specifically Tennessee, and before that Ole Miss, where NIL was very much and is very much being harnessed to its fullest capacity. You know what I mean? Like Ole Miss, just to give you a sense of the kind of environment that was there, Ole Miss sort of famously, I think a year or two ago, had a month, I think it was the month of September, where the athletic department told its donors, don't donate to us this month. This month of September or whatever it was, no donations. Anything you would have sent to us, send to the collective. And I don't think Alan Green was at Ole Miss when that happened, but that's the kind of environment that existed and probably still exists in the Ole Miss athletic department. And so that's what Alan Green is around. That's what he's observing. That's what he's seeing. And I can only assume what he was on board with. And what he learned is how aggressive you need to be as an athletic department in fostering some of these things. And then he goes to Tennessee, where they have an NIL operation up and humming along, because you have to, if you're going to be competitive in the SEC, you have to be competitive in the NIL space. And so he's learning there as well. And I think he's getting a sense of what it takes to compete at that level. And, what works at Tennessee, what works at Ole Miss might not necessarily work at Pitt. It's a different world. It's a different fan base. It's a different donor base. It's a different situation. And so I don't know if he necessarily is going to come in with ideas from there, because I sort of feel like to some extent Ole Miss fans and Tennessee fans are just, they walk around with their checkbooks out at all times. We will give you our money. You know what I mean? Like, tell me where you want me to give, not tell me if you want me to give money. Tell me where you want that money to go. I'm giving money regardless. You tell me where you want it to go. I think that's an exaggeration, but maybe not that crazy of an exaggeration of Tennessee and Ole Miss fans. You're not going to have that at Pitt. So some of the programs that they had at Tennessee or plans that they had at Auburn may or may not be appropriate, may or may not work at Pitt. But the commitment to NIL, the commitment to giving your coaches a chance to assemble competitive rosters, the commitment to doing everything you can within the letter of the law and right up to the very edge of the letter of the law, that commitment is what Pitt needs Allen Green to bring from Tennessee. And I mean, like, I'm like everybody else. Everybody I ask, they all have nice things to say about him. Sounds like he's a great guy, personable, smart, and he's been around. He's been around big time athletic programs, and that's good. You like to have that kind of leadership, but he's got to be committed to doing the things that are necessary to really be competitive in this new era. And then he's also got to find a solution for revenue sharing. That also, good luck with that. And I don't know if Tennessee or Ole Miss are going to help him all that. His experience there is going to help him all that much in those areas. But at the very least, he should understand what's important and how you have to go about it in order to compete in 2024. So that's the hire. Pretty big one for Pitt. Pretty big one, I think. And look forward to meeting Allen Green and seeing what he's got to offer. All right, Pitt moved up in the AP poll. They are now number 19 in the poll. So moving up one spot from 20. Not too much to say about that. SMU somehow fell a spot. They went on the road, beat a conference opponent by 30, and fell from 21 to 22. Right now, there are 4 ACC teams in the AP poll. Miami is number 6, Clemson number 9, Pitt number 19, and SMU number 22. You compare that to preseason, there were 4 teams in the ACC who made the AP poll preseason. Florida State 10, Clemson 14, Miami 19, and NC State 24. Florida State and NC State have fallen out completely. Miami has jumped 13 spots from its preseason ranking. Clemson up 5. Pitt and SMU coming in from being unranked in the preseason, and now they're in the top 25. Pitt, one of just 10 teams nationally. They're still undefeated. The number drops to 10 after Texas lost to Georgia. None of those undefeated teams play each other this week, so there's no guarantee that anybody will lose, that you'll get that number down to 9. But Navy does play Notre Dame at Giants Stadium or MetLife Stadium, whatever it's called. And Oregon, like Pitt, is hosting a one-loss team. Oregon's hosting Illinois. Pitt, of course, hosting Syracuse. So there's a chance in there, and then you never know what kind of upset might come. I think Penn State's going to Wisconsin. I mean, that can always be tricky when you're going on the road in conference play. But we'll see. We'll see how many undefeated teams still exist when this weekend's over. And we'll find out about Pitt first, right? We'll find out about Pitt first on Thursday night. And then Pitt Volleyball. Panthers, of course, last weekend lost to SMU, their first loss of the season. Then we talked to Olivia Babcock on Friday. And since then, Pitt Volleyball has not lost. Most notably, they took care of business against number 5 Stanford yesterday at the Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. Number 5 Stanford rolls in, I don't feel like I need to elaborate much there. You're facing a top 5 program, and Pitt didn't just beat them, they swept Stanford. I think 25-17 in the first set, 25-16 in the second set, and the third, I think it was like 25-20, but it just felt like Pitt was in control the whole time. A number of, at various points throughout this season, it's felt like Pitt is sort of toying with teams. They teams will get a little momentum or get a little bit of a run and, maybe even take a lead or something, and then Pitt will just rattle off like an 8-0 run or a 9-0 run. It wasn't really like that yesterday against Stanford. Stanford never really got the momentum. Stanford never took a lead. They might have had a lead at like 3-2 or something like that, but they never really threatened. And Pitt was just aggressive. They were attacking, and they were dominant. Olivia Babcock is a legitimate player of the year candidate. Tori Stafford's playing incredible. Bree Kelly had a great game. Rachel Fairbanks played really well. It was just an outstanding performance. And as far as a bounce back from the SMU loss to beat Cal and Stanford in 3 days, it's impressive stuff. And that program, number one volleyball team in the country, just is humming along. I mean, this is the most successful, most dominant team at Pitt right now. And if you're a Pitt fan and you're a fan of sort of sports greatness, you know what I mean? You're a fan of like teams and players that are playing at a really, really high level. Like, I highly encourage you to watch a Pitt volleyball match. They're all streaming. You can watch them all streaming. You can go to it. But even if you just watch it streaming, it's really exciting. Volleyball is really exciting. Some of the stuff that these women are able to do is incredible. I mean, just incredible athleticism. If you watched the interview on Friday, I asked Olivia Babcock if she can dunk a basketball. She said she's dunked a volleyball, and I said, well, that's good enough. It's more about, can you get up high enough to do it? And she can. I mean, she's listed at 6'4". You watch her on like the spikes or the serves. I mean, she's getting pretty far off the ground. It's incredible to watch. And this team, They've got a killer instinct. Despite the loss to SMU, they've got a killer instinct, and they are killers out there. So I highly recommend it. All right, those are the main things I want to get to. The AD, the new poll, and the volleyball success. Look, man, Thursday night is just 3 days away, right? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to this. I'm really excited for this game. I think you probably are too. It is a huge game for Pitt. I don't know what kind of crowd they're going to have there. I don't think it matters. The students will show up. I know that for sure. And anytime Pitt does something, I think that place is going to be rocking. I think it's going to be a great night on the North Shore. Hopefully you'll be there. And either way, we'll have a lot of Pitt talk between now and then. Morning Pitt videos every day of the week. And then, of course, our live stream on Wednesday night with me and Jim Hammett at 8:30, and then the post-game show after the Syracuse game on Thursday night. That's going to be a doozy, and I hope you can tune in for it because it's going to be fun. And then we'll have a live Morning Pitt on Friday morning. I'm looking forward to that. I think that one will be just as much fun. We have the whiskey on Thursday night, and then we get some coffee for the live Morning Pitt on Friday morning. So looking forward to all of it. Should be a good time. Hopefully you can tune in. Make sure you like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. And, thanks for tuning in today. Hope you had a great weekend. I hope your week gets off to a great start today. And we will catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.